John Wesley said, "I am a creature of a day, shot like an arrow through the air, hovering for a moment over a deep gulf, soon to be seen no more. What I want to know is how to get safely to heaven's shore. God has condescended to tell me the way. God has come to earth to show me. God has written in a book. Oh, give me that book." That's what we're here for tonight. This book. The one that I use for my devotions is about maybe 2/3 this size and thickness. And oftentimes, when I sit down in the morning and pick it up, I think, here, beneath these covers, in this thin book, is all I need to know how to live and die. Oh, it's not all we need to know, but it's all we need to know to live and die. All right. Well, one of the principles of Bible study is context, context, context. The realtors say location, location, location. But if you're going to understand the Bible, you've got to understand every statement in its larger context. That's the nature of the Bible. That's the odd thing about it. Most holy books are simply bare statements, supposedly from the God. Not the Bible. There's only one book that is somewhat like that, and that's the book of Proverbs. But even that one, you need to know something about its context and its setting. Why is this? I'm convinced it's because God is a God of relationships. Everything is understood in relation to everything else, because that's the kind of God He is. So this means that you need to start at the largest. Now, we're not going to start with the whole Old Testament tonight. But from the largest unit to the next largest, and the next largest is the Pentateuch. Pentateuch. Well, did you know Latin? 5 of law. Penta, 5, tuque, law. 5 books of law. But some of you have stuck it out with me through a number of studies, and you'll know that the Hebrew word is Torah. Torah does not mean law. Torah means instructions. And I have to tell you, I love that. This is not the book that says, you either do this or go to hell. No. This is our designer saying, honey, this is the way you were made to operate. So where did law come from anyway? The answer is the Septuagint. The Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. Now, it's called that. That means 70, because the legend is there were 70 translators, and they were in 70 separate rooms, and they came out with 70 word for word the same. Well, I think that might be stretching a little. That's why it's called the Septuagint, the 70. It was done in roughly the 100 years between 225 and 125 BC, 200 years before Christ. It was done in Alexandria. Alexandria, Egypt, at that point, was the intellectual center of the world. The great Greek philosophers had been 2, 3, 4 centuries before that. By this point, Alexandria had the greatest library. It was the center And the Septuagint translates Torah with the Greek word nomos, which means law. What had happened to change the understanding of the Torah from instructions, guidance, to law? What had happened? Well, what had happened was Judaism. If you don't hear anything else tonight, hear this. The Old Testament is not the Jewish Bible. That's a heresy. You hear people say, oh, I want the Christian Bible. I want the New Testament. No, no. This is the Christian Bible. What happened was this. The Old Testament, there is a trajectory. Then you've got a period of 400 years. That's not a great marker. Let's try this one. During this time, Judaism grew up. This is when what we know today as the Jewish religion came into existence. The Jewish religion is, yes, the Pharisaic religion. Now we're told, I mentioned this in the Sunday school class, we're told that there were 80 different sects of Judaism during Jesus' time. 80. The Jews say if you have 5 Jews, you'll have 6 opinions. But one of those sects survived. Why was Jesus so hard on this bunch? I mean, really, the Sadducees, and of course children love that, they were sad, you see. The Sadducees were the elite. The Sadducees were the priestly group. They were the intellectual group. Jesus has virtually nothing to say to them. Frankly, because I think they were off the chart as far as he was concerned. But these folks were so close. They loved God. They loved His Word. And they wanted, by all means, never to go to Babylon again. Why did we go to Babylon? We went to Babylon because we broke the law. Well, actually, they broke God's heart. So, what are we going to do? What are we going to do to make sure that never happens again? We're going to surround the 613 instructions with 1,200 more laws. So that maybe if we get on a tear and we break these, it'll slow us down at least, and we won't actually break these. What is serving God about? Serving God is about doing what He demands. And when you live like that, then you've got to figure out how many demands do I have to keep? I have students like that. Prof, how many pages do I have to read? And you sort of say, okay, yeah, that's all right. Then there is that odd one who says, Prof, I really want to learn this stuff. Is there more I can read? Oh, you want to hug them. That's where the Pharisees were. And Jesus yelled at them. Some of the strongest language in the Bible. And again, I always love this. You know, I love the New Testament with gentle Jesus, meek and mild. Mm-hmm. You low down snakes! You are a whited sepulcher full of dead bodies. Tell us what you think, Jesus. But that's what's going on. And that's, if you try to make the Torah a means of making yourself acceptable to God, all it can do is damn you. It's not a way to make yourself acceptable to God. It's the guideline for walking with Him who has accepted you by grace. So, what is the central theme of these instructions? These 5 books of instruction. What's the central theme? Well, the answer is covenant. Covenant is what all 5 of these books are all about. But as soon as I say that, I need to make a point. Some of my dearest friends believe that covenant is what the Bible is about. That God's purpose for us is to be in a covenant with Him. Wrong. And the reason I say that is because that presupposition is going to assume that there was an original covenant between God and Adam and Eve. And that Adam and Eve broke their covenant with God. That's a lovely idea, but it's not in the Bible. No, covenant is a method for restoring relationships after sin has entered the world. Covenant is not God's goal for us. His goal for us is beyond covenant. His goal for us is that we walk with Him. So you see this process. I'll say more about this in just a moment. Starting with a covenant with Noah, then a covenant with Abraham, then a covenant with the Israelite people, the Sinai covenant, and ultimately a covenant with the descendants of David. That's interesting. We were obviously on a widening path. Noah to Abraham and Abraham's family and the Israelites. And then all of a sudden, bingo, back to one family. How interesting. But what we're seeing here is God's salvation method and its covenant. So, covenant is the means of divine human relationships, but it's not the end. It's not the goal. What is God's goal for us? A walk with Him that results in ever-growing likeness with Him. That's all the way back there it's hinted at us, and I love the picture. Enoch was not, because he walked with God. All the way back there in chapter 4, if my memory serves me right, which is really dangerous at this age. But anyway, there's the hint. What's this all about? And of course, you're probably thinking, before that, God walked in the garden. 3/4 of the occurrences of the verb walk do not have to do with physical movement. 3/4 of them in the Bible, Old and New Testament, have to do with your relationship with God. So many of the modern translations will say you need to live with God. Well, that's not wrong, but it misses the flavor. God says, come on, honey, let's go for a walk. That's what he wants. Does he want a covenant? Absolutely. Absolutely. But the covenant is the means, not the end. You pick it up especially in Genesis 17:1, where after the Ishmael incident and 13 years of silence, God shows up and renews his covenant, and he says at the outset, walk in my presence and be whole. King James says, perfect. Be all you were ever meant to be. Wow, that's exciting. That's God's goal for you and me. He wants to walk with us. A walk that starts now and goes on. And I like to think of that Enoch story. You know, God and Enoch are walking down the road together. God says, Enoch, we're a lot closer to my house than yours. Why don't we just go on? Let's just go on. I have a sister who died recently, and she walked with God. She walked on. So what about this means of restoration? God is so economical. He is so careful. He's headed toward Sinai. But there's been a flood. The whole human race, except for Noah's family, is gone. And God says to Noah, I'm not going to do that again. I swear it. I make a covenant with you. Now, covenants normally are bilateral. Two parties. No, you don't have to do a thing. I swear on my own, may God strike God dead if God ever breaks this covenant. Wow. What's that telling us? It's telling us, guess what? God is not out to get us. That's what the snake tells us all the time. The snake is very, very uncreative. Why should he be? It works perfectly. You don't want to serve God. He's out to get you. He's going to use you. And you're going to be unhappy. Let me make a covenant with you, Noah. I'm not out to get you. And then Abraham. Some of you are in the Sunday school class at the Free Methodist Church, and you've heard this till you're sick of it. But in the beginning, Adam and Eve distrusted, disobeyed, disbelieved. Excuse me, I got it backwards. Distrusted, disbelieved, disobeyed. So what does God have to do? He's got to convince Abraham that he's trustworthy. And how does he do it? With three very unspiritual things. Have you ever thought about that? God doesn't say to Abraham, now I'm going to offer you eternal life. God, Abraham, I'm going to make you holy. No. Abraham, would you let me give you that baby you long for? Would you let me give you that piece of land that you'd like to have? Would you let me give you a worldwide reputation? Wow. Some of you have heard me say this, but all the angels were holding their breath. What do you think, Michael? Will he do it? I don't know, Gabriel. The last 25 he made the offer to didn't take it. I'm confident Abraham was not the first. But Abraham looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at Abraham. Said, what do you think? Shall we do it? Yeah, let's. I've often wondered if he lost his job the week before. Or maybe their house burned down. Or maybe she'd had a miscarriage. I don't know. C.S. Lewis said, God whispers to us in the good times. He shouts at us in the bad times. I don't know. But there it is. And it's not a covenant here, as I say here. It's just informal. It's just a series of promises. You want them? Come get them. But God's not going to stop there. He's got a plan. So there comes the day. 10 years have passed. No babies. Sarah has forgotten what menopause looks like. God says, hey, Abe, you're going to have more kids than stars. Have you seen Sarah, God? Do you believe me? You see, God's going to say something really, really crazy later on. Like, your whole eternal destiny depends on what you do with a 30-year-old Jew in Jerusalem. Come on. Come on. Do you believe me? And it was counted to him as righteousness. Yeah, the only right thing you can ever do is believe God. He believed. And God, again, in a completely unilateral way, says, you're going to have more kids than stars. I swear it. May God strike God dead if God ever breaks this promise. Wow. Trust, believe. Do you want God, Abraham, or do you want the presence? Do you want the presence, P-R-E-S-E-N-C-E, or do you want the presence, P-R-E-S-E-N-T-S? I want God. I want God. Oh my. The whole history of the world hung on that moment. Do you want the presence or do you want the presence? Now that doesn't work in Hebrew, but it works really nicely in English. So, finally, he gets to the point in chapter 17. You want the covenant? Yeah. Yeah, I do. I do want to walk with you. I do. I do want to become whole. All I was ever meant to be. Okay. Then put my mark on your body. The littlest thing. I mean, really. What's the big deal about a piece of male skin. Oh, I can reproduce myself. I don't need God. Just a little thing. A little step. Yes. I agree. And then, of course, comes Sinai, which is fully bilateral now. This is, God says I'll do this, the people say we'll do that. Now it is truly a committed, connected relationship. And what is the purpose of all that? The purpose is divine self-revelation. That's how salvation comes to the world. It comes to the world by God showing us who He is. And again, some of you have been with me a lot, you know all this. These people have spent 400 years in the most pagan environment in the world at that time. Now, Hinduism has surpassed the Egyptians. But the Egyptians had thousands of gods. They had it figured out. These were bright people. Only one problem. Everything they believed was wrong. That's the amazing thing about paganism. None of it is right. Everything is wrong. That ought to teach us something. How good is human wisdom? How many gods are there? Well, thousands. Wrong. There's one. Are the gods part of this world? Well, of course. There's nothing else but this cosmos. Wrong. Can you manipulate God through magic? Well, of course. Wrong. Is sexuality the life force of the universe? Sure, look around you. Wrong. There's about 15 of these, and they're wrong on every one. So what's God to do? Is He going to drop a philosophy book on them? Or a theology book? These are slaves. Most of them can't read and write. What's He going to do? You want to be in a covenant with me? Sure we do. We saw what happened to the Egyptians. Yes, we want to be in a covenant with you. Okay? You may not worship any other god. Now notice, he doesn't go into a big philosophical discussion of monotheism. You want to be in a covenant with me? Yes. No other gods. Really? Well, okay. And about 1,000 years later, Zeke elbows Abi and says, Abi, I'll bet there aren't any other gods. And Abi says, oy vey. Only one? You cannot make me in the form of anything created. There are only 3 religions in the world that believe that. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and all get it from one single source. Zeke, I'll bet God is not part of this world. Huh. What a crazy idea. Yeah. So it goes. The whole instruction manual is designed to teach who God is. That's why there are 4 commandments about Him and 6 about other people. This God cares about people. He doesn't see them as objects to be used. He values your stuff. He values your sexuality. He values your life. He values your reputation. What kind of a God is that? Thank the Lord, it's a wonderful God. That's what's going on in the Sinai covenant. God is revealing himself to them and the world. Okay, what about the structure? We start out with Genesis. The problem. Big problem. Humans trying to be God. Number 1 to 11. And 12 through 50 is the solution. Trust, believe, obey. And you see it in 3 generations. Actually 4, but you sort of skip the second one. You see it in Abraham. Trust, believe, obey. You sort of skip over Isaac. I don't know why that is, but like most of my ideas, I got this one from Dennis Kinlaw. He said, maybe it was dangerous because Isaac was a miracle child. Maybe he would have gotten worshipped if too much attention was given to him. Could be. Abraham, Jacob. Here's how a man of faith exercises trust, belief, and obedience. Here's how a crook exercises trust, belief, and obedience. And then Joseph. National implications now to his trust, belief, and obedience. So, 3 takes on the solution to the problem. Then, Exodus through Deuteronomy, how do you implement the solution? How do you work this thing out? And as I've already said, you're going to work it out in terms of covenant. Exodus 1:18, this should be 1 to 19. Nope, it's right, 1 to 18. To Sinai, the power and the providence of Yahweh. Exodus 19:1 to Numbers 10:10. We talked about this last year when we were looking at Leviticus. This whole thing is the covenant document. Exodus 19:1 through Numbers 10:10. You say, where do you get that? I get that from the fact that Exodus 19:1 says, we got to Sinai on the first day of the 3rd month. Numbers 10:10, we left Sinai on the 20th day of the 2nd month of the 2nd year. 11 months between the two. In the 3rd month of what? 3rd month of the 1st year, starting to count at Passover back in Egypt. So here's year 1. They got there on the 1st day of the 3rd month. 2nd year, 20th day of the 2nd month. Everything that happened then in that 11 months has to do with the covenant. You begin with the terms of the covenant. That's 19 through 24 of Exodus. What are the terms? And some of you might remember the projection that we saw here. The terms of the covenant. Then you have 25 through 40, which is the goal of the covenant. But that's out of chronological order. That actually didn't happen until down here in the first month of the second year. Why did he do that? Because he's going to pick it up again later. I'll say more about that in just a minute. So Leviticus 1 through 9. What's the means whereby fallible people can live in the covenant and not be destroyed? Sacrificial system. But they didn't get it. They didn't get it. Why do you have to have these sacrifices? Because God is deadly, that's why. Oh, it's just God. He lives under my bed to answer my prayers. They didn't get it. So God gives them some object lessons. The key to the whole thing. There is clean and there is unclean, and clean can live with God and unclean can't. Got it? If your washcloth gets mildew, you got to burn it. What? It's unclean. The unclean cannot live with God. You get a contagious skin disease. You can't live in the community. You got to live out there. Because you'll make the community unclean. Is skin disease unclean? These are object lessons, folks. These are object lessons. Okay. Chapter 16 and 17 are about blood, the Day of Atonement. So that actually the means gets finished here. This thing is an interlude because they didn't get the point. Then you have chapters 18 through the end of the book. Anybody remember how many chapters there are in Leviticus? Yeah, good. I thought so. Anyway, living the covenant. And then in Numbers 1 through 10, particularly 7 through 10, the goal. What's the covenant about? The covenant is about God coming home to the human heart. That's what the covenant is about. Okay. Numbers 1 to 36. It's what we're going to be looking at. From Sinai to Moab, and then apologies to J.R.R. Tolkien, there and back again. This is Bilbo Baggins' autobiography entitled There and Back Again. But it really works with numbers. Failure and recovery. This is the beginning of Israel's life story. We're going to do this over and over again. From Joshua to Malachi. Now, don't talk to me about a short-tempered God. If God was short-tempered, we would not have any more Bible after Numbers 14. But there it is. Now you notice what I've done here. I've overlapped, and that's what's happening here. Numbers 10 is transitional. It's pointing back to the conclusion of the covenant materials, but it's also pointing ahead, getting them ready for what's coming up. Okay. Amazing. Now, I need to tell you this outline, not all my notes, but this outline is, excuse me, I forgot Deuteronomy. On the plains of Moab, reaffirming the covenant. It's really doing this over again. Trying to get them ready to say yes this time. That's what Deuteronomy is about. Okay? Now, this chart that I'm going to show you is largely stolen from Dr. Robert Traina from about 40 years ago. It's so good it has to be preserved. Numbers. 3 main divisions. First of all, at Sinai. And you've got an outline there that is based on this same thing. Second, chapters 11 through 21, or the latter half of chapter 10, through actually 22 verse 1. As I've said to you many times, the chapter divisions were put in some 500 years after Jesus. And they were done mostly apparently by one monk. Really? Yeah. And every once in a while his donkey hit a pothole. And his pen jumped. Chapter 22 really begins at verse 2. Sinai to Kadesh, there and back again. We'll talk about this. They get to Kadesh Barnea in chapter 14, and fail. And they spend 40 years in the wilderness, and then God brings them back to Kadesh. Not to enter the land from here, though. To begin the journey up to Moab. There's some theology there that we'll talk about. And finally, from Kadesh to Moab, chapter 22 through chapter 36. When we look at the book, we discover a couple of major recurrences. Now, this is sort of technical language. If you're talking about the same word reappearing, that's repetition. If you're talking about similar ideas reappearing, that's recurrence. So that's a technicality here. So we see a couple of recurrences. We see a couple of repetitions. One of them is preparation. We see in chapters 1 to 10 preparation for the journey and the conquest. Tragically, that fails. And so we've got to try it again. Preparation to enter the land. Recurrence of preparation. Also, recurrence of pivot. Pivot is when you're headed one direction and something happens and you go off in another direction. That's a pivotal point. Now, Dr. Traina called it cruciality, and unfortunately, that we don't mean pivot when we say something's crucial. He did. Crux is cross. That's where crucial comes from. Cruxial. So his descendants have corrected him, and it's pivot. What pivot? We're going. We're on the way. We waited 11 months, and now we're going. You've trained a horse. You've trained a horse to jump. Small hedges, larger fences, big fences. He's got it. He's got it. And so you're in the horse show. And you come to that last fence, and the horse digs in all 4 hooves, and you go over the fence. What are you going to do with that horse other than shoot him? You're going to send him back to the pasture and put him out to stud and see if his foal will get it right. Chapter 14 is pivotal. And the result is down. Down. Until they come back to Kadesh 40 years later with a second generation. Will the stallion's foal get it right? When we look at this preparation, we see a certain amount of physical preparation. We're going to look next week at the first 4 chapters, the most boring part of the Bible, the census. But there's much more spiritual preparation. The emphasis is upon spiritual preparation. What happened? We cannot do this. We are not able. We look like grasshoppers to them. How do they know that? Did they ask these Canaanite giants, what do we look like to you? No. In their own hearts, they see themselves as grasshoppers. And almost no emphasis upon spiritual. And again, it is so astonishing. Joshua says, we can do this. God is for us. They're nothing. We can do this. And they say, no, we can't. No, we can't do it. So Moses says, okay, head back to the wilderness. What? Oh, we'll do it. God is not with you. That doesn't matter. Ay, ay, ay. With God, we can't do it. Without God, we can. That's an IQ of 10. Now, in the wilderness period, we're going to see, there's some spiritual preparation, there's some physical emphasis. They sort of go around and around. But ultimately, they start toward Moab. And in the 21st chapter, we see them allowing God to do things for them. Small victories. And that brings them to the edge of the Jordan River. And they're ready to do this with God. And again, the emphasis is on the Spirit and the Spirit's work. This lovely big section here, 24 through 25, is Balaam's story. When he's hired to curse them, and he can't. All he can do is bless them. Makes the king of Moab so mad. So there it is. That's what we're going to be studying. We're going to be looking at the necessity of the spiritual. Physical? Yeah, it's there. Yeah. As long as it's in the right proportion. So you have the blessing of Balaam. Here's where organization occurs again. You've got another census 40 years later. But notice the order. Then you've got a long section about festivals. When you enter the land. Well, man, we saw that in Leviticus. We saw it in Exodus. What's the deal? Are you going to maintain your spiritual life or not? Well, as a matter of fact, they didn't. That's what Judges tells us. Hey, we got the land. You can go peddle your papers, God. We don't need you anymore. Well, we would point our fingers at Israel, except that 3 of them would be pointing at us. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Is it I, Lord? Yes.
What does the REL stand for?
Religion. Religious practices, the festivals. And finally, when you get in the land, there's some things that you've got to get in your heads about who owns the land. God owns the land. You're not going to conquer. God's going to give it to you. And He owns it. And you are allowed to settle on it as a family so long as you're loyal to Him. You may remember feudalism in Europe. The king owned all the land. And the king gave portions of the land to his favorites, and they had obligations to help him. He had obligations to them. Very interesting. But there it is. So, 8 o'clock on the button. I think that's the first time that's ever happened. Questions? Comments? Blew you away? Don't hesitate. Now, you've got a handout for next week. I will not be at all put out if you do it in advance.
How many weeks is this series? Is it for the semester or for the school year?
It's for the semester. There's also a schedule out there. So running to the 3rd Monday in December, we will skip the last Monday of September. I'll be doing a revival at a church in Ohio. and we'll skip the Monday of Thanksgiving week. Otherwise, Lord willing and weather permitting, we'll be here every Monday night. Thanks to Don and to Jenny, who are making this thing visible. Let's pray. Lord, thank you. Thank you for your incredible patience. Thank you for putting up with them and us. Thank you, Lord, for your word. Praise you. Praise you. Thank you for men and women who died in order that we could have the Bible. Help us, Lord, in our study. It's not a very exciting book, but it's your book. And so help us to discover what you want to say to us out of this book. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you all.